Many Americans have been convinced with the belief that money could buy not only influence and access, but freedom. These four women, however, proved them wrong. They displayed that even wealth isn't always enough to keep the walls from closing in. From media darlings to secret socialites and biotech prodigies, each of these women once stood at the pinnacle of success, fame, and fortune, only to come crashing down in the most dramatic, criminal, and sometimes deeply disturbing ways. Let's dive into the twisted tales of four extremely rich women who are currently rotting in jail in the United States. Their crimes will leave you stunned. Case 1. Elizabeth Holmes, the blood queen of Silicon Valley. Her steps, her elegance, and the style of her dressing. Elizabeth was once hailed as the next Steve Jobs, but the crimes she committed left the hearts of many shattered. Elizabeth Holmes was a young founder and CEO of Theranos, a biotech startup that promised to revolutionize blood testing. Valued at over $9 billion, Theranos claimed it could run dozens of medical tests using just a few drops of blood. Investors poured in hundreds of millions. Holmes graced the covers of Forbes, Time, and Fortune. She wore the black turtleneck, mimicked Jobs' minimalist aesthetic, and convinced some of the most powerful men in America to sit on her board. Even the former United States Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, and the 26th U.S. Secretary of Defense, General James Mattis, couldn't resist such an offer. But beneath the surface, Theranos was a house of cards. Whistleblowers and investigative journalists exposed that the tech simply didn't work. Tests were inaccurate, results were falsified, and patients were misled. By the time the truth came out, Theranos had burned through $1 billion of investors' money. In 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted of defrauding investors and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. The court ordered her to pay $452 million in restitution. But many of those defrauded, including Rupert Murdoch, never saw a cent. As of today, Holmes has only served a few months of her sentence, with a long road ahead. She currently resides at the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, a far cry from her former Palo Alto mansion. Her transformation from the youngest self-made female billionaire to a convicted felon is one of the most dramatic falls from grace in business history. Her crime? Lying to investors, misleading doctors and patients, and putting lives at risk, all under the guise of innovation. Her downfall wasn't just a business failure. It was a betrayal of public trust in science and medicine. From billionaire to inmate, Holmes's journey is a cautionary tale of ego, illusion, and the price of faking it till you make it. Holmes's story isn't just about ambition, it's about how far people will go to project an illusion. Case 2. Ghislaine Maxwell, the heiress of horror. Ghislaine Maxwell, British-American socialite and youngest daughter of disgraced publishing magnate Robert Maxwell, was born into a life of opulence and global influence. Raised in a 53-room mansion in Oxford and educated at Oxford University, she was fluent in 5 languages, a fixture at elite events, and often photographed on yachts and red carpets. But beneath the high society glamour was a woman whose descent into darkness would become one of the most shocking scandals of the 21st century. Ghislaine, indeed, followed her father's footsteps. You see, Ian Robert Maxwell was a Czechoslovak-born British media proprietor, politician, and fraudster. However, his death was not at all glorious. He was found floating dead in the Atlantic Ocean under circumstances still debated till today. Now, following her father's mysterious death in 1991, Ghislaine relocated to New York, where she embedded herself in the social and political elite. It was here that she met financier Jeffrey Epstein. Their relationship blurred the lines between romantic partner, business associate, and co-conspirator. What began as an affluent social pairing soon evolved into a deeply disturbing criminal partnership. In July 2020, Maxwell was arrested in New Hampshire after months of evasion. The FBI dubbed the capture a discreet takedown. She was charged with multiple federal counts: enticement of minors, sex trafficking, and perjury. Prosecutors revealed Maxwell had personally groomed underage girls. The prosecutors narrated how she lured some young girls, 14 years of age, into Epstein's orbit with promises of money, mentorship, or modeling opportunities. Once ensnared, they were sexually violated, often while Maxwell watched or participated. During her trial in late 2021, harrowing testimonies from survivors revealed how Maxwell orchestrated a pipeline of exploitation that ran through Epstein's sprawling network, including his Manhattan townhouse, Florida estate, New Mexico ranch, and private Caribbean island. Her influence and presence gave victims a false sense of safety. Even one witness called her the Lady of the House. The court was shown flight logs, photographs, and a disturbing little black book of contacts filled with names of billionaires, royals, and politicians. In December 2021, she was convicted on 5 of 6 counts, including sex trafficking of minors. Many people who witnessed the case judged that if there was a book detailing the names and activities of criminals, she would be at the front page with trophies. If that is not scary, I don't know what is. Despite her legal team claiming she was a scapegoat for Epstein's crimes, who died by suicide in a Manhattan jail cell in 2019, the jury disagreed. On June 28, 2022, Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison and fined $750,000. She is currently incarcerated at FCI Tallahassee, a low-security federal facility in Florida. Maxwell now spends her days in a beige cell with a metal cot, earning pennies an hour doing prison labor. Gone are the lavish Manhattan soirees and royal yacht vacations. Her requests for leniency were denied, despite citing harsh conditions during pretrial confinement, including being watched by guards 24/7. What makes Maxwell's case especially chilling isn't just the depravity of the crimes, but the quiet, calculated nature of her role. She was not a passive bystander. She was Epstein's enforcer, recruiter, and fixer. She wrapped her manipulation in wealth and charm, turning privilege into a weapon, just like her father. Well, if you think Maxwell was manipulative, the female billionaire was the Batman of crime. This Batman, or Batwoman, needed to spend some time in Arkham Asylum because the crime she did stunned many. Case 3. Claire Bronfman, the heiress who bought into a cult. Claire Bronfman is the daughter of billionaire Edgar Bronfman Sr., heir to the Seagram liquor empire, and one of the most powerful figures in the global business world. Born into unimaginable privilege, Claire had access to elite education, global travel, and philanthropic networks. She was a skilled equestrian and competitive horse jumper. Yet, rather than carving a legacy of generosity or leadership, she became a financier of one of the most disturbing cults in recent U.S. history, NexIVM. Founded by Keith Raniere, NexIVM marketed itself as a personal development and executive success program. Behind its seminars, however, lay a sinister underbelly of control, psychological manipulation, and sexual exploitation. Bronfman became one of NexIVM's staunchest patrons. She poured more than $100 million of her fortune into the group's operations, propping up its failing businesses, paying legal fees for its leaders, and relentlessly suing former members and critics into silence. Her wealth effectively turned NexIVM into a fortress. She funded private investigators to track defectors, bankrolled intimidation campaigns, and enabled Raniere's most dangerous impulses. Perhaps most chilling was her role in financing DOS, the secretive subgroup within NexIVM that functioned as a master-slave system. Women were branded with Raniere's initials, forced into sexual servitude, and subjected to coercive blackmail under the guise of female empowerment. Although Bronfman claimed she had no direct knowledge of DOS, prosecutors revealed that she used her resources to harass and deport women critical to the investigation. She paid for surveillance teams, attempted to bribe officials in Mexico, and manipulated the immigration system to keep Raniere's inner circle intact. In 2020, she pleaded guilty to 2 felony charges: conspiracy to conceal and harbor illegal immigrants for financial gain, and fraudulent use of identification. At her sentencing, victims and former NexIVM members pleaded with the court to hold her accountable. One described her as a dangerous enabler who weaponized her wealth. Claire Bronfman showed little remorse during the hearing. She insisted that her involvement in NexIVM was based on conviction, not coercion. The judge, unimpressed, sentenced her to 6 years and 9 months in federal prison and imposed a $500,000 fine. She's currently serving her sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut. Behind prison walls, the heiress who once walked red carpets and owned private islands now walks in regulation shoes and answers to correctional officers. Her legacy is no longer tied to the Bronfman name, but to the cult that consumed her fortune, her identity, and her future. Her fall from grace stunned many. A woman of enormous privilege, Bronfman used her money not to protect or uplift, not even for, justice, but to control, punish, and silence. Her unwavering loyalty to Raniere and Nex IVM, despite overwhelming evidence of abuse, stands as a haunting example of how blind devotion can corrupt even the richest lives. The next case wasn't as rich as others here, but she sure make one hell of an impact. Case 4. Shannon Richardson. From Screen to Scheme. Shannon Guess Richardson may not be that super, but her case is just as shocking. An aspiring actress with bit parts on The Walking Dead and The Vampire Diaries, she lived a seemingly normal life in Texas, that is, until 2013, when she was arrested for mailing ricin-laced letters to President Barack Obama, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and a gun control advocate. What made the crime even more bizarre was her motive, to frame her estranged husband, Nathaniel Richardson. In the midst of a messy divorce, Shannon concocted the plan to poison political figures and make it look like her husband was responsible. Authorities traced the ricin to her kitchen. Her digital fingerprints were all over the scheme. She eventually pleaded guilty to possessing and producing a biological toxin and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. She's currently incarcerated at FMC Carswell, a federal medical prison in Texas. While not a Forbes Rich like the others on the list, Richardson's case preaches about the depth of human instability and the danger of entitlement unchecked by ethics. Her attempt to weaponize a deadly toxin for personal revenge shocked the nation, and also reminded us that sometimes the most dangerous people aren't at the top of the Forbes list, but hiding in plain sight. Each of these women represents a different kind of fall, from tech titan to traitor, from socialite to sex trafficker, from heiress to enforcer, from actress to bioterrorist. Their stories force us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, wealth, and justice in America. Money can open doors, bend rules, and buy silence, but it can't always buy freedom. These 4 women had resources, influence, and platforms most people could only dream of. But when ambition turned criminal, the system stepped in. They now live behind bars, waking up not to luxury linens or boardroom meetings, but to the cold steel and strict routine of a prison cell. Their stories serve as stark reminders. No one is above the law, and even the most gilded lives can end in shackles. If you found this breakdown fascinating, subscribe for more deep dives into the dark side of wealth, power, and justice. And remember, sometimes the richest people have the darkest secrets. Click here to watch more.